That's fine. All right. Okay. First, we got two problems I'd like to go through that were very similar to what we did last week. So we were doing meter reading. That was the activity we did on Friday. Just kind of wanted to see where you guys were sitting. So the meter, if it went from 0, 1, 2, 3, and let's say the dial was pointing here. 0, 1, 2, 3, and the dial's pointing there. 0, 1, 2, 3, 9, 8. Pointing there, and the last one, 0, 1, 2, pointing there. Okay. We were talking about meter reading. So you could look at that meter and read off the actual usage that you had. Now remember, when you read off a meter, you have to look at the number that you definitely passed. Now these circles don't actually have arrows on them. So on yours, you have to actually look at the numbers. So like 0, 1, 2, this dial is supposed to be spinning that way. The other dial is going every other. That's just how they work. So I can get a sense for how that works.
I don't have to do 0.7, right?
Nope, you already have it turned in.
Alright,
So.
thank you.
Yep, thanks, sir. All right. So 0, 1, 2, 3. At this point, what number have I at least passed on this?
2.
At least passed 2. I haven't made it to 3 yet. Passed 2. Next one.
1.
1. Next one. 8.
What?
I passed 8. It just went past 8. It hasn't went to 9 yet. Next one. 0. I haven't made it to 1 yet. You have to look at the numbers. That's the tricky part. So like when they start getting to those spots, you're like, oh, it's 9. You get used to like how it looks. You have to see whenever you pass and what you're going towards. Okay, now that's normal usage. Hopefully that makes sense. Maybe earlier in the month you did another one, and so this is like at the end of the month. Maybe the earlier of the month, this is what you used. Maybe that's what the meter reading at the beginning of the month, and this is after the end of the month, right? So the idea is that if you want to figure out your usage, you just subtract the two numbers. That's where a calculator comes in handy. Just literally subtract them. Okay? Some people are going to do it in their head. It's going to be 176. Again, how you do that? You borrow. It's a 7. That's 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 7 minus 0 is 7. 1 minus 0 is 1. You get the idea. Does that make sense? What we were doing on Friday? Meter reading. Please, Joe, just put the thing back. Thanks. Now, the last thing we did on Friday, the absolute last thing we looked at was if you had to calculate, how much usage you had on the water bill or electricity, whatever this chart represents, maybe this electricity bill, and the idea is that maybe they're charging you 54 cents per usage. Okay? Maybe that's the usage. Okay, so this is 54 cents per unit. They usually tell you that price. Okay? Then what you do is you multiply these two together, and you get what your final total bill would be for the whatever company is. And if it's electric, there you go. There's your electric company bill for the month. That's just how it works. Now again, these are just made up numbers. You get the idea behind what you need to do. So if I was doing that, 54 cents, 0.54. 0.54 times 176. I'm paying $95 for the electricity bill that month. $95.04. Does that make sense what you're doing? Pretty straightforward, right? Now, there's this question that, I don't know if you guys brought up or if I just brought it up on Friday, was what happens if you're looking at your meter and it does a rollover? Like where it goes back to 0, right? Because, maybe at some point you read your meter, right? So you're doing your dials, and maybe this is the end of the month, and the end of the month, the dials are now back to 0. And maybe it was, between 5 and 6, and this one is between, 8 and 9. So when you read the dial off, this is where we're sitting, right? But the beginning of the month, you read your dial, and it was this. Like this was the beginning of the month. This was the end. What we talked about is if that ever happens, where the end of the month is actually technically a lower number than what you started with, don't subtract these two. Okay, you're going to get you're gonna get like 9,000 units used. You didn't use 9,000. It rolled over by accident and there wasn't enough dials. So what you have to think about is this number that you should be at is technically 10,000. It's 10,000. It rolled to 10,000 at the end of the month. It's 999.9 rollover. And so now I can subtract. So because I made this 10,000, this is 8 minus 1, 7, 5 minus 4. I'm gonna have to borrow, making this a 9. This is a 10, 10 minus 9 is 1. 9 minus 9 is 0. So you actually used 117. At home. And then you will do your bill. Does that make sense if you ever have a rollover, what you do? Does that make sense? You go to 10,000 instead? You only have to do it probably once, and then after that, all the numbers should be back to normal again. It's just that there's that rare occasion where it does actually hit the 999, right? Most cars, if you've ever seen a car actually hit 1 million miles, it never rolls over. It stays at 9s on the dash forever. So, it's kind of weird when that actually does happen. There's some original cars that dials didn't go up that far. So. Okay, questions on the idea of calculating how much you're paying per unit of energy or water or electricity? Okay, last one. This is something that I hinted at, that I talked about myself, like what I experience when I do my electric bill. And it's the idea of like having an average in your billing cycles. Okay, so I'm going to stick with the same numbers. Again, I'm just kind of making up numbers here because I don't actually know what my numbers are. I'll have them memorized. Let's say that you could do this every month. You could calculate your usage and pay your bill, and so every month it's a different number. The electric companies also allow you to do an average, which it changes every 6 months. So after 6 months, they look at your previous 6 months and they do a new average. What I mean by that is, let's say, January, February, March, April, May, June. Here's 6 months worth of of energy, right? So in January you used 158 units, February you used 164, March you used 120, April 115, May 120, and June you did 130. And that's units. So that was reading your meters and figuring out what your usage was. What they would do in that case where for the next 6 months, what they're going to do is they're going to find your average. So this would be, July to December. They would find your average, what you did here, and that's what your new bill is every 2 months. So you have a consistent bill. So it's not like it's not varying depending on how hot it is and how cold it is. It's just an average number. You have the same number for 6 months in a row, so you know exactly what your energy bill is. So in my case, how you find an average, you take 158, you add 164, you add 120, you add 115, you add 120, and 130. So you add up all 6 of these numbers, and then you divide by 6. And so my average usage over 6 months was 134.5. That's my average usage. And then I just get charged that, for the next 6 months. So if that's my usage, and they're charging me 54 cents, per unit, like I just did in the last one, take that times 0.54, my bill for the next 6 months is $72. $72.63, and it's the same for 6 months. So I don't have to worry about it. It's just 73 every time. Now, why that's helpful? It's really nice when you come off 6 months and you didn't really use a lot of energy because during the summer, the only thing you're really probably working is your air conditioning unit, or maybe you don't even have that, so you're not using that much energy because you're not heating your home. The next 6 months will be really cheap. That's really nice when that happens, because when you start entering those winter months and your bill starts to increase, then it can be a pain. Because if you think about this, I'm paying $72 for 6 months for the next, if my averages went up, if all these numbers were up, and like this month by itself, when I used that 164 times 0.54, that month alone was $88. That was $88. And and that affected, every month could be different. Well, I like to keep it consistent because in fact, for 6 months, having an average, that beats these weird outliers. It beats the weird outliers, and I'm gonna pay in the long run less money. Okay? As long as I stay somewhat consistent. Okay? If I have a lot of extremes, that does affect my scores. So I wanna try to keep those extreme months down to a minimum. But it is helpful to know exactly what your bill is, so you don't get that shocking bill, in January if you use your heater, every single day, and then you get a $500 bill for energy because you use that much, in heat. So it keeps you even keel, but that will affect you in the next 6 months. So after July through December, they average those 6 months, and that'll affect your next six months payments. So it just kind of rolls over. Does that make sense? That's how you do an average. You add them up, you divide by how many there are. So there's 6. Okay, questions on any of the things we've done so far? Okay, now, here's what I'm gonna warn you. Tomorrow, I'm gonna be gone tomorrow. I'll be I'm in the building, but I'm in a meeting for model teaching. So tomorrow, this is basically what your homework looks like. They're gonna give you a couple numbers. You're gonna have to find how much you used per that month. Maybe this is December to January, figure out what you used. And then figure out cost. The last couple problems you're gonna have tomorrow is where you have to find an average. How much did you average use for all your units? But I don't think they asked to figure out your final cost, but they do ask you to figure out what your average use was. Does that make sense what you're doing tomorrow for your homework? Is there any questions about any of these problems we've done today? All right, we're done for the day. Pretty easy. Nice and simple day. Tomorrow I'll be gone. Sub will be here. They'll basically give you your homework and